I miss my dad. I miss the way he said, "Hi, sweetie," with such joy and curiosity each and every time I called him. A long, long time ago, and just a little while ago. My father died almost 4 months ago today. Although he had Alzheimer's and declined slowly over the past 5 years, he was still reading Thomas Jefferson and Abraham Lincoln out loud to the other residents where he lived right up until the end. In the nursing home where he lived his last few months, his friends and the staff called him the gentleman. I think they called him that because my dad was always respectful with all people, because he believed, not just in his head, but in his bones, that all people are created equal. He believed in America and the republic for which it stands. He believed in America and what she represents more than he believed in God, if truth be told. More than he believed in a traditional capital letter G God, anyway. His sacred texts were the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States of America, mixed in with some Emily Dickinson and the morning newspapers. My dad actually taped the Bill of Rights onto our bathroom wall when we were kids and offered us $100 each if we could memorize all 10. My father also worked for and then with his father for many years. One day when they were driving to work together, my dad told his father that he was questioning the existence of God, that he had doubts, that he didn't think he believed. His father, my grandpa Simon, listened, and then he replied quietly and firmly, "And who are you to doubt the existence of God?" That's the end of that story, at least the way my family tells it. I don't know what either one of them said next, sitting in that big Cadillac with the super soft seats, my grandpa with his dark hat and overcoat chewing on the cigar in his mouth. My dad so much younger than I ever knew him. I imagine they changed the subject. But the story doesn't end there. It continues today in my life and in your lives as we each test the limits of our doubt and our freedom to believe and not to believe. Not just what the fathers who raised us taught us, but what our founding fathers taught us about faith and its place in the American experiment with democracy. It's fascinating history because our free faith, as many have called it and still do call it, is deeply rooted in our nation's revolutionary and historic struggles for ever-expanding freedoms. Freedoms of all kinds, political and religious, individual and collective, secular and sacred. When talking about freedom, though, we have to be careful to distinguish if we are talking about people who are seeking freedom from something or people who are seeking freedom for something. This matters in the personal, political, and religious arenas because if we don't know what the purpose of our greater freedom is, we often use it primarily for our own gain or use it to restrict the freedom of others. Our religious ancestors faced this challenge as they claimed their newfound religious and political freedoms in the first colonies. The Puritans, for example, used their freedom from control by the Catholic and Anglican churches in Europe to impose restrictions on the freedom of others to practice the religion of their choice here. It wasn't until after the Revolution, until after each of the colonies had tried some kind of state-supported religion and watched one after another fail, that our founding fathers started to think and talk seriously about tolerance, religious pluralism, and the separation of church and state. When I say leadership failed, I mean that the result of the government supporting one Christian sect over another was that all the people practicing minority Christian denominations or other religious traditions were persecuted, aggressively and violently persecuted, while the people belonging to the majority religion took their freedoms and their faith for granted and grew complacent. It wasn't good for the majority or the minority or the government. Our founding fathers were forced to feel and think their way into a new way of being religious and political at the same time. Each stage and step, each debate and decision way back then created what we would call today our culture wars. Similar to my father with his father, our founding fathers disagreed about whether a focus on serving God or on serving the principles of liberty and justice for all was more important. Adams and Madison, like my grandfather, advocated for a focus on God, and more specifically on becoming one nation under God. Jefferson and Franklin strongly supported a focus on liberty and justice for all, like my own father. Unitarian minister Reverend Forrest Church wrote, "Today's Christian right claims that the United States was founded explicitly as a Christian nation with a Christian government. They seek only, they say, to restore the faith of the founders. The secular left claims that the United States was founded on an explicitly secular foundation as codified in the Constitution. As it turns out, both sides are 100% half right." As we do today, the early republic divided right down the middle. From the outset of our experiment in government, the founders fought tooth and nail in a contest over American values, a vigorous, sometimes savage conflict to redeem the nation's soul. It's in our nation's DNA. We could say it's in our family's genes, which explains why conservative and liberal church members and political leaders can and do claim the founding fathers as their source of wisdom, inspiration, and guidance. But especially if you have used the founding fathers as a way to close and win an argument yourself with a friend or a relative who insists our country was established as a Christian nation, it may surprise you and be important for you to know a few things, to know the following. John Adams, our second president and someone who is often claimed as a Unitarian, he thought the church was an essential support to government, even if Orthodox Christian theology happened to be false, which he suspected it was. And on the other side, that Thomas Jefferson, who frequently attended a Unitarian church in Philadelphia and who famously advocated for and built a very high wall, a wall of separation between church and state, that the same Jefferson worshiped every Sunday at a chapel set up in the Capitol and dreamed one day that all Americans would subscribe to a single national faith, he called it, a faith called Unitarianism. Apparently, he enjoyed imagining a day when everybody would be just like him. And some early Unitarian preachers went so far as to reject the Declaration of Independence as subversive to Christian values. Back then, the Unitarians were the established churches in Boston, being supported by the government, and they didn't want to lose that special church status and all the power that went with it. So they preached against liberty and equality, and they wore black rosettes on the 4th of July instead of the red, white, and blue. Their black rosettes were a symbol of protest against the left-wing deists and Baptists who fought fiercely with Jefferson for a clear separation of church and state, because back then Baptists were a minority denomination in our country. Oh, so how some things do change. The faith and influence of our fathers definitely changes from generation to generation to generation. And so it's left to us, each of us, who have inherited the legacy of our biological, our political, and our religious fathers, to doubt history as it has been taught to us, to dig deeper, to discover which lessons are lasting and which teachings don't pass the test of today. Or put more simply, it's on us to claim the best and leave the rest. Many of you are already doing that. You may have left churches you grew up in because you've rejected an angry and vengeful God who the preacher and perhaps your parents used to threaten you with on Sunday mornings and even throughout the week. But in your hurry to leave the church you grew up in, you may also have forgotten to pack up some valuable practices. You may even have left behind some precious beliefs that could serve you now. There's a tendency when we transcend something like a relationship, or when we outgrow a community or reject an earlier way of thinking or being, that we turn our back on it and betray something that may still be true and important in our experience. We can sometimes leave the rest but forget to claim the best. And it's tempting to do this even with our own fathers in our own personal lives. My father loved me dearly, and yet he left my mother and our whole family when I was 12. Soon after he left, he married another woman who had 3 children. His leaving and his choosing to be with another family hurt so much that for a long time my heart grew a hard shell around it as I tried to protect myself from feeling any more pain. We grew incredibly close again in time, as John Wolfe said, slowly, slowly, slowly. But recently, his death has reminded me of how it felt when he left me so long ago. I can be tempted at times, even now at my age, to reject him again, tempted to try to punish him again, or my stepmother, who's still alive, somehow now for leaving me again. Okay, yeah. We're on the same wavelength. But since now all I have are memories of my dada, I'm working instead on claiming the best and leaving the rest behind. I have the power to accept the love he felt for me, however imperfectly, or to reject it. No one else does. And that's a very important part of freedom also. Not just the freedom to choose to move on, but the freedom to choose to claim or reclaim important parts of our past. It's something we practice here daily, week after week, year after year at All Souls. Part of being a participant in a free faith requires examining the faith you grew up in and making sure you don't forget to claim the best even as you leave the rest. It may be a certain atmosphere or a feeling of devotion you felt in church growing up that you don't want to lose touch with here. It may be a certain prayer or a song or a hymn, and even though the words aren't perfect anymore, they still work a certain magic in your heart or on your soul. It may mean singing in the choir because listening to the choir in your home church moved you in ways you didn't understand then and you still don't understand now. It may even be remembering and reclaiming the love and good intentions of the people who raised you, even if you see and suffered from their shortcomings, even knowing you will never forget how they disappointed, hurt, or betrayed you. It's a spiritual practice to recall and reclaim the love or goodness that has been hidden beneath unfortunate and even harmful doctrines or decisions in our personal and our political pasts. It's spiritual work because the practice removes the hard casing we've constructed around our own hearts, built to block out pain, but equally effective at blocking out love. Living faithfully in freedom means not being afraid to examine the best and the worst of what our forebears have passed on to us. Heck, our founding fathers disagreed on almost everything, and they were absolutely hypocritical about freedom and equal rights. How else could they have written the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution while defending the institutions of slavery and holding on to their own slaves? How else could they have declared that we are endowed by our Creator with inherent rights and then exclude women from having the same rights as men? How else could Hamilton, founding father of these freedoms and hero on the theatrical stage today, have dreamed of establishing a Christian constitutional society and prohibiting non-Christians from standing for national office, which he did? He definitely recognized the political advantages of wrapping himself in the holy garments of both Christianity, and the Constitution. As the culture wars around and within us pass from one generation to the next, I invite you this week, starting with today, Father's Day, to take some time to remember and reclaim the best, and to let go of the rest. From my lapsed Unitarian parents and unchurched upbringing, I claim a legacy of intellectual, religious, and spiritual curiosity. And I leave behind a sense of hyper-independence and individualism that makes me think sometimes that I could survive without the support of friends or family or a community like this one. And so I ask you this morning, what do you want to remember and reclaim? And what do you want to release or leave behind from your father, from your parents, or from your religious upbringing? It is in our power to be free on all levels, the personal, the political, and the religious. These ever-expanding freedoms our founding fathers fought through, then fought and died for, are some of the most precious gifts of doubt. Because they doubted and dared to try to create a new nation founded on the radical religious and political principles that there is both one reality of which we are all a part, and that all people are created equal and are endowed by their Creator with inherent rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that we are here today with the responsibility to choose not only freedom for ourselves, but to determine what we will use our freedoms for. This is what makes our faith tradition great. It's what makes All Souls great, and it's what makes the United States of America great. I hope you will choose freedom and figure out what your freedom is for. I hope you will claim the rest and leave. I hope you will. Let's try that together. I need your help. I hope we will claim the best and leave the rest. One more time with me. I hope we will claim the best and leave the rest. May it be so. You're visiting with us online today. We love connecting with people all across the country and around the world, sharing our powerful message of love beyond belief.
There's something new happening here. You can now join All Souls as a virtual member. Our virtual membership is designed for friends who live outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and who want to engage with All Souls in a meaningful way.
You can be part of an expanding family, a global family really, wherever you are. If you live in Oklahoma,
Ohio,
or Orange County, California,
Canada,
or Cameroon. By becoming a virtual member, you'll be able to deepen your connections with members and friends here in Tulsa and with members wherever you are.
Each week, you'll receive special All Souls content tailored for you, our virtual members. Virtual members have access to pastoral care, to personal prayers, and also receive invitations to exclusive web events.
You can learn more, and if you're ready, you can become a virtual member today by visiting allsoulschurch.org/virtual membership.
We're grateful our ministries are having a positive impact on your life, and we want to share the good news of love beyond belief with more and more people. So no matter what, we need your support to keep this ministry growing and thriving, so please consider making a gift today. You can do so by texting
LOVEBB for Love Beyond Belief to 73256, or simply visit our website. You are a blessing in our lives. May you be blessed.
And be a blessing.